Good morning, everyone. My name is Christopher Lomeli, and so for this presentation, I wanted to take a look at direct to consumer genetic testing. You know, like those kits like the 23andMe and Ancestry, where you basically spit in a tube and you mail it in, and then a few weeks later, you'll get reports back on your Ancestry and maybe some other uh, health stuff like health conditions, or they'll give you some information, a little bit of insight into your health history. Um, but anyways, I've been wondering about these things and what they can actually tell you, and if they're really worth doing it or not. So I'm gonna dive right in here. So to understanding how any of this works, you have to start with the DNA. And you've got the double helix shape, so it's kind of like a twisted ladder in a way, and the rungs are four bases that are always paired the same way. So we have the A with the T, and then the C with G, the specific pairing that makes these tests even possible. So companies generally don't read into your whole genome. They kind of look at the small changes that are called SNPs, the single nucleotide polymorphisms. So basically, one letter differences in your DNA that, and at certain spots, some of these have been linked to traits or health risks. Based upon the pairing rules are so consistent, these labs can pick up on little variations pretty reliably. So I found that to be quite fascinating. So in this other slide, there's the central dogma. So the DNA to RNA to protein. The DNA has instructions, and the RNA copies them, and the proteins do the actual work in your body. So if there's any change or mutations in your DNA, it can mess with your protein that gets made. So which can also rise and lower your risks in certain diseases. That's really what these genetic tests are scanning for. Known variants that researchers have connected to certain health conditions. So in this other slide, so what actually happens when you take one of these tests? Uh, you'll have to send a saliva sample. So for my own personal experience, I did the Ancestry one, and I basically it came in a box, and I had some instructions, and then there's like this little test tube looking thing. But anyways, there's a certain level where you have to spit into this little vial, and it kind of took me a while because it does require for you to produce, in my opinion, a substantial amount of saliva in order to meet that requirement, and then you repackage everything according to the instructions, and then you ship it out. So once the lab pulls the DNA out of the cells in your spit, um, these usually isn't enough to work with, so they amplify it to make a ton of copies. So when they're using the genotyping on the DNA chip to read specific spots, after that, you'll get your ancestry report and whatever health risk information that they bring up in their report. So in this slide, one thing that seems useful is early awareness. So if you find out that you're at the higher risk for something like heart disease or certain cancers, you can talk to your doctor and maybe start making changes before they actually start happening, which I think is a very useful preventative measure depending on what kind of health conditions that are brought up in your DNA. So I see it as a very beneficial uh, information for you to know preemptively. So that part I get. It can also be helpful for some people. But what really concerns me more is the privacy side. So once your DNA is in the system, it can be shared with other companies or researchers. So 23andMe had partnered with the pharmaceutical company called GlaxoSmithKline. Um, sorry, it's GlaxoSmithKline. There also have been some cases where law enforcement got access to these databases for me personally, that's a bigger issue because the information that's is already out there. Like, so there's no restrictions from the information that they were able to obtain from people that submitted tests through them. So you don't really get to take it back. I mean, once it's out there, it's pretty much open to the public or for these companies, law enforcement to basically take advantage of that kind of information. So this next slide. So before this class, I honestly didn't think too much about these tests, especially after taking one of them. I mean, I thought it was very interesting and pretty cool to kind of see more into my family background and some cool little health facts and interesting features about myself uh, and seeing the kind of characteristics that were found in my DNA. So I figured that they were mostly just fun to learn about ancestry with maybe some health info on the side. I didn't really consider the science behind them and what could go wrong. So after talking about the situation with 23andMe and then the breach of the privacy for people and other organizations to take advantage of the access to that kind of information. But after going over the DNA structure and how the central dogma works, mutations in the gene expression, I see it differently now. And these tests are more powerful than I thought, but they also have real downsides. And it makes me more cautious about whether I even want to do another one. Um, Especially through a different company. And I really hope that Ancestry doesn't have the same downfall as 23andMe. But I mean, my information is already there in their database, so it's not much I could really do about it. But I also understand better than your genes aren't the whole story about somebody. So what you can do in your daily life still matters a lot. And it's not like the test gives you any definitive future or anything like that. So on this other slide, what I keep thinking about is this: even if somebody finds out that they have a higher genetic risks for something serious, how many people actually change their behavior in a real lasting way? And I think that is a very critical question that not many people think about. Is what are going to be your future actions that are going to prevent some of these certain health risks that you might find out through these DNA tests? And I think sometimes people don't really take it too seriously at first, but at the same time, it's something to keep in mind. So, I mean, I don't know the answer, but it matters. Uh, if most people just get anxious or don't really do anything different, then these tests might end up causing more stress than what they're worth. And it makes me wonder how useful they actually are in the long run. So I'm curious to what you all think. If you got results showing that you had a significant higher risk for something like heart disease or cancer, um, what would you actually change in how you live? Would it motivate you to make changes, or would it just add worry without much else? I'd really like to hear what you think because we all kind of gauge and how important certain things are for us. And when I got my test back and it was telling me information about my high blood pressure, and surely enough, it was accurate because I do have high blood pressure. But if I would have taken this test a few years ago before my high blood pressure escalated over time, I think I would have done things a little bit more differently. But that's just me. As far as taking the proper precautions and doing something about it with time, but having that time in advance to address the situation. But that's just my own personal experience. So I'm kind of curious to hear what everybody else's experiences might be, if it might be similar, or is it just something that people just end up forgetting about until they go to the doctor and then they find out that they have exactly what they were warned about through one of these tests. So I'm curious. So definitely let me know what you all think. So So thanks for listening. I put together the references on the last slide. If you want to check out any of them out, they're available. I'm happy to answer any questions about this and the science, privacy concerns, and whatever else comes up. I greatly appreciate your time, and I hope some of you took something away and from this presentation and are able to kind of expand on your understanding on how these DNA genetic tests work. Because I certainly learned a lot more doing some research about it. So, anyways, I hope everybody has a great day, and I look forward to hearing from you all. Thank you so much.